You know, there's something absolutely fascinating about this whole business of love that nobody seems to want to talk about. We've created this extraordinary mythology around it, this beautiful, devastating lie that we tell ourselves from the moment we can understand fairy tales. And the curious thing is, we know it's a lie, but we go on believing it anyway, like children who refuse to give up their security blankets, even when they've grown too large for them. Here's the paradox that will make your head spin if you really think about it. To love, truly love, is to offer something without condition, without strings, without the secret hope of getting something back. But to be loved? That's an entirely different game, isn't it? That seems to come with more conditions than a Victorian marriage contract. Now, if you're over 30, and particularly if you're wandering through those bewildering decades of the 40s and 50s, you've had enough bumps and bruises to know that the fairy tales were charming little fabrications. You've probably discovered, perhaps to your horror, that love doesn't arrive as a reward for being good. It doesn't stay simply because you've been faithful, patient, or what society calls deserving. Think about it for a moment. How many people do you know who have poured themselves out like water from a pitcher, drop by precious drop, into the life of another person, only to watch it all drain away through fingers that once held them so tightly? How many have you met who still share the same roof, the same bed, the same daily routines, with someone they supposedly love, yet feel like strangers at their own breakfast table? And then there are those restless souls, perhaps you've been one of them, who wander from heart to heart, thinking that surely the next embrace, the next whispered yes, the next romantic adventure will finally fill that peculiar emptiness inside. But what do they find? The same hollow echo bouncing back at them, like shouting into a canyon and hearing only their own voice return. Isn't it strange that something as natural as breathing this thing we call love has become such a labyrinth of unspoken contracts, silent negotiations, and quiet disappointment? You begin to sense, don't you, that somewhere beneath all the poetry and the promises, there's a truth we've been dancing around, afraid to look at directly. Here's what I think has happened to us. We've confused the packaging with the present. We've mistaken the elaborate wrapping paper for the gift itself. From the moment we drew our first breath, the world began whispering its secret bargain into our tiny ears. Love is something you must earn, little one. Be good, and you will be cherished. Be useful, and you will be kept. Offer beauty, strength, devotion, and the great reward of love will be yours. But listen carefully now, this is not love at all. This is commerce dressed up in romantic clothing. It's a transaction masquerading as tenderness, a marketplace exchange between two people who have been taught to call their elaborate trade agreement romance. You see, a business arrangement can certainly hold two people together, like merchants, bound by a contract. They'll stick around as long as the terms are being met. But the moment one party fails to deliver the goods, well, they part ways, don't they? No matter how many years have passed, no matter how deeply their lives have become intertwined, out comes that invisible ledger, and the accounting begins. This is why so many men and women wake up one morning in their middle years with a kind of cold recognition creeping through their bones. What they thought was love, what they built their entire lives around, was really just an arrangement. Oh, it might have been beautifully packaged, wrapped in wedding vows, decorated with flowers, sealed with the trembling promises of youth. But at its heart, a simple business proposition. I'll give you what you want if you give me what I want. And when the giving stops, whether through exhaustion, aging, illness, or simply the natural process of change that affects everything in this universe, the warmth begins to fade. Those eyes that once lit up when you walked into the room now glance past you as if you'd become just another piece of furniture. Here's what nobody tells children. This kind of love is a performance, and all performances eventually come to an end. When you mistake the performance for the real thing, you spend your life in a state of quiet exhaustion. You give your time, your energy, your loyalty, your very life force, believing that this investment will secure the thing your soul is crying out for. But what have you actually secured? Not love, merely the continuation of a business arrangement. And so it happens that people who have spent decades faithfully fulfilling their part of the bargain find themselves bewildered when the warmth disappears. Not because they've stopped caring, but because life itself has moved on, as life always does. Nothing in this universe stands still. Even mountains erode. Even diamonds eventually turn to dust. The person you fell in love with has changed, just as you have. And suddenly the contract you built your relationship on begins to strain under the weight of impermanence. But here's an even more uncomfortable truth. When the terms of the bargain are no longer being met, you'll often see the mask slip. In the absence of what they were seeking from you, whether it was security, validation, comfort, or status, some people will show you who they really were all along. That tenderness you thought was their natural state, it may vanish like morning mist, revealing not necessarily cruelty, but a kind of hollowness where genuine love was never planted. You may have felt this yourself, that subtle shift, when someone's gaze no longer lingers on you with delight. The laughter that gets replaced by a watchful, calculating silence. The change is so gradual, so quiet, that you can almost convince yourself it's not happening. But in those moments of stark clarity, you see it clearly. You were never cherished for your essential being. You were valued for the services you provided. When this kind of arrangement falls apart, it doesn't just end cleanly. It unravels something deep inside you. It leaves you staring at the wreckage, wondering if you were ever truly loved or if you were simply useful. Now, let me tell you what love actually is, because it's something entirely different from this marketplace madness we've created. Love is not a bargain. It's not a chain or a cage or a system of debts and credits. It's not, I will, if you will, and it certainly isn't the anxious scorekeeping of who has given more. Those things belong in business transactions, not in the sacred space of the human heart. True love, and I mean the real article, not the counterfeit version we've been sold, is a kind of freedom. It's the liberty to give without keeping a ledger, without making demands. It's the ability to be fully present with another human being, not to possess or control them, but simply to care for them, because the caring itself brings joy. It's a gift offered without the shadow of a contract lurking behind it. There's no anxiety about whether it will be returned in equal measure, no secret hope that your investment will pay dividends. You give it because you can't help yourself, the way a flower can't help but bloom or a bird can't help but sing. But here's the paradox within the paradox. This kind of love cannot be given by someone who is starving for it themselves. The heart that is desperately hungry to be loved back will always, and I mean always, attach invisible strings to its giving. It will watch and wait and measure. It will keep track of what it's given and what it's received in return. And when the accounting doesn't add up, bitterness begins to grow like weeds in a garden. You cannot love freely until you stop begging for love. And you cannot stop begging until you've discovered within yourself a source of nourishment that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval or affection. Where is this source? It's not in another person's eyes, or in their praise, or in their promise to stay with you forever. It's in the recognition, the deep bone-level knowing that you are already the beloved child of the very mystery that brought you into existence. Call it God, if that works for you. Call it the universe, the Tao, the eternal ground of being, or simply the nameless mystery that somehow dreamed you into reality. Whatever name you use, here's the extraordinary truth. It has loved you into existence without condition, without you having to earn or deserve a single thing. Look at the sun for a moment and consider this. After all these billions of years, the sun has never once said to the earth, "You owe me." It just keeps shining, keeps giving its light and warmth freely, without expectation or demand. And look what happens with that kind of love. It lights up the entire sky, makes life possible, creates beauty beyond description. When you truly understand this, when you know in your bones that you are already held by an unconditional love that requires nothing from you, then you can stand unshaken whether other people love you or turn away. You become like the sun yourself, giving love, not because you need to be thanked or appreciated, but because you can't help yourself. It's simply the overflow of the life that moves through you. To love becomes your freedom. No one can take it away from you because it's not dependent on their response. It's the natural expression of your own being, flowing out of you like light flows from a star. But to be loved? That's an entirely different matter, and it's never in your control. You cannot command it, purchase it, manipulate it into existence, or convince it to stay through logical argument. Love offered to you is a gift that arrives according to its own mysterious timing, like rain or wind or the changing of seasons. If love is given to you, receive it with wonder and gratitude. Drink deeply while it flows. But never, and this is crucial, never clutch at it as though it were the last drop of water in the desert. The moment you try to drag love from another person's heart by force, it stops being love and becomes something else entirely: obligation, pity, or bondage. Remember this always. You are already loved, not by the fickle tides of human affection, but by the source from which you came. It breathed you into life without asking for anything in return, without setting up conditions or making demands. If you want to experience love from others, it must begin with this recognition of your own inherent worth. Not the shallow kind of self-love that's really just narcissism dressed up in New Age clothing, but the deep acceptance of your own being without reservation or apology. When your heart is at peace with itself, it stops begging and starts inviting. And when two such hearts meet, two people who have learned to drink from their own inner wells, something magical happens. They don't come together as beggars with empty bowls outstretched. They arrive as givers, carrying such abundance that it spills over naturally. In this kind of union, there's no bargaining, no secret scorekeeping, no quiet dread about who owes what to whom. Love flows between them like a river meeting the sea, natural, effortless, without strain or force. The joy isn't in taking from each other, but in the simple sharing of their overflowing fullness. Neither person is trying to fill an emptiness in themselves. They're already complete. This is the only kind of love that doesn't eventually rot into resentment. Because where there's no emptiness demanding to be filled, there's no fear of losing what you never needed to complete yourself in the first place. But such meetings are rare, aren't they? Most people spend their lives searching for someone to complete them, not realizing they were never half a person to begin with. Only when you've learned to drink from your own well will you naturally attract another who has discovered their own inner spring. Here's something else to consider. The world you encounter each day is not separate from you. It's a reflection of your inner state. You cannot draw from a well what isn't already in it, and you cannot meet in others what you haven't yet discovered in yourself. If you carry an emptiness within you, you'll find yourself surrounded by people who want to take from you, not because the universe is conspiring against you, but because nature abhors a vacuum. Those who are running on empty will naturally be drawn to your energy, and you'll mistake their hunger for love. But if you move through life with a sense of inner fullness, you'll attract those who also carry their own abundance. They won't clutch at you or drain you because they're not living on scraps. Instead, you'll find an ease in their company, a recognition as natural as breathing. This isn't some mystical law of attraction or cosmic trick. It's simply how human meeting works. The depth to which you've been willing to face yourself becomes the depth to which you can meet another person. Most relationship conflicts aren't really between two people at all. They're between the unexamined shadows and unhealed wounds that each person has brought to the table. So, before you go searching for kindness, understanding, or devotion in someone else's eyes, take the time to meet your own gaze honestly. Not to condemn yourself or catalog your flaws, but to make friends with the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Because it's this hidden self, the aspects you haven't yet embraced, that extends the real invitation to others. This unseen inner landscape determines whether the love you encounter will nourish your soul or slowly unravel it. When this truth really takes root in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it gently with the young people in your life, because they're walking into the same beautiful illusion that once ensnared you. Teach them that love is not the breathless romance of popular songs or the solemn contract sealed before altar and law. It's the willingness to care without keeping score, to give without the constant fear of loss, to remain open-hearted even when there's no guarantee of return. If they don't learn this, they'll build their relationships on shifting sand and wonder why everything keeps falling apart. But if they do understand, they'll build on solid rock, and love will not be a prison but an open sky. The question that matters is not how can I find someone to love me, but rather how can I become someone who overflows with love? Because when love stops being a desperate plea and becomes a natural gift, when your joy is no longer chained to another person's approval, you'll discover something remarkable. Love is not something you have to chase or bargain for or anxiously protect. It's already the way you are. You are not half a person searching for your other half. You are already whole, already complete, already flowing with the love that created you. And from that wholeness, love moves outward effortlessly, finding those who recognize its authentic nature immediately. Then love stops being a hunt or a negotiation or a desperate holding on. It becomes what it was always meant to be, the quiet, steady radiance of your own being, asking for nothing in return, yet warming everything it touches. This is the secret the sun has known all along. This is the dance of love as the universe intended it, free, abundant, and eternally flowing from the inexhaustible source of what you truly are.